Hi everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. This is my Q&A live stream for episode 5 and also for season 8 more generally. As we always do, but the way this is going to be structured is by the questions I've got from my patrons. I've got a lot of questions from my patrons. As you would expect, there's a lot of questions about Daenerys, what she was up to in episode 5. Also a few questions more generally about episode 5. Some questions about episode 6. What's going to happen if they ever come straight away. And I'll pick up as many questions as I can from the chat as we go through. Thank you so much for I can see there's loads of people already in the chat, so it's fantastic to see you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dive straight in with a few questions that I had from my patrons about sort of overall what I think about season 8. Because this is something that's come up a few times, is that in my videos I give quite a straightforward explanation of what happened without giving my own personal thoughts. So I got a couple of questions from Kira McGee. Says, how do you honestly feel about the events of episode 5? Your episode walkthroughs are wonderful, but seldom do you editorialize. Do you agree with the denizens of the internet who voted the episode the worst in Game of Thrones history? And Leanna's Lament says, please give everyone your honest opinion on this episode. I love your diplomatic way of dealing with things fans dislike or like, but I really want to hear your thoughts, as I feel this last episode has polarized the Game of Thrones community. Okay, so where I'm at is this. So this channel is always, probably always will be, an explanatory channel rather than a reviewing channel. And what I mean by that is that with my videos, I try and explain what's going on. I try and give a little bit of insight. I try and give some that will happen. Not exactly the same. We'll get onto this in detail in a moment, I'm sure. That will happen broadly the same in the books. What I am disappointed with tends to be more to do with character arcs and plotting rather than any of these big beats of the story, if that makes sense. So I'm still enjoying it. I'm not going to pretend that I'm loving it, all the rest of it, but it's oh, it looks like I disappeared for a while. Apologies, go. It means that you missed a whole load of my discussion about what I thought about season 8. So, oh well, you'll just have to guess. I enjoy it, but I'm not blind to the difficulties with it. Let's go to a question about episode 5. Could the girl at the start of episode 5 be poisoning Danny? I think this was from Bonds, saying Danny has twice been saved from poisoning, wine by Jorah and locust by Strong Belwas in the books. So it's certainly foreshadowed. So I think the answer to this is yes, probably. If you go back and look at that scene right at the very beginning of episode 5, then Varys is asking this girl who was clearly working for her whether or not Daenerys is eating, and she is there working in the kitchens, and he basically says, you've got to try again. And what the clear implication is that he is trying to get her to be poisoning Daenerys. So that's what seems to have been going on there. Yes, I think that's what it was. I think Varys saw this as his cunning plan. He was going to poison Daenerys. He was going to write out to all of the leaders across the rest of Westeros, and he was going to get them to come behind Jon. So that seems to have been his plan. Let's quickly go to a couple of super chats. I saw we had a couple of super chats before we went live. Maura Lee, thank you so much. Very generous super chat saying, just a show of love and support for all the excellent content. Looking forward to episode 6, the documentary. Yes, there's going to be a documentary. If you've not picked up on this, there's going to be a documentary when episode 7 might have happened. That is when they're going to do a documentary, the kind of the making of Game of Thrones as a whole. And they've got a whole load of the actors who were there in the early years, people like Sean Bean's coming back, Mark Addy, and they're going to do a proper full-length documentary about the making of Game of Thrones, which is going to be fantastic. So I'm also looking forward to that. And when the Traveller's Guide, Maura says, when the Traveller's Guide resumes, yes, so we're going to, with the Traveller's Guide, if you've not come across my channel before this season, one of the things that I do every Friday usually is the Traveller's Guide to Westeros, which is just me going through the different locations within Westeros and trying to experience them as a traveller would do. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What are the tastes? Is it hot? Is it cold? All these kinds of things. And we've worked our way through Westeros. We've gone through it. I think we've done like 50, 60 different episodes now. And now, once this season is finished, we're going to start up again in Essos, and we're going to start in Braavos, which is my favorite city in the entire world. So we got 4 or 5 episodes I'm going to do there. So I'm really looking forward to it. Brenda Dotter says, in the books, isn't Bran becoming enmeshed in a weirwood tree? I've suspected all along that the showrunners changed that part of Bran's storyline. Yeah, so where we're at with Bran in the books is that Bran is roughly where he was about 3 seasons ago. He's up there in Bloodraven's cave. He's hooked up to the weirwood network. He's not yet, as Bloodraven is, he's not actually properly attached to it. So Bloodraven, there are roots running through him. There's one coming out through his eye, things like that. So he's properly attached into the weirwood network. Bran isn't yet. I suspect what's going to happen in the books is something broadly similar to what we saw. It's not going to be exactly the same, but broadly similar. I think that Bran is going to have to come back down south again. I think he will escape. I think there's a good chance he might escape through underground tunnels rather than overground, but that's a detail. So I think that, yes, he will escape. He's not yet hooked up and cannot move. And that's, I think, the crucial thing. I think he will head down. So the Hodor moment, which is obviously was huge on the show, the Hodor moment will happen in the books, but in a slightly different way. So Hodor is going to be holding a door in some way, but it's going to be slightly different. So that's where we're at. Scott Koenig saying, for paying your ISP bill. Sorry, guys, if that clicked out for a little while earlier on in the stream. Apologies, it doesn't normally do that. I do pay for the best possible internet provider that I possibly can, but there we go. Ryan Furland, thank you so much for the super chat as well. Let's go to some more questions from my patrons. Peter Pebble says, early in episode 5, Tyrion approaches Dany at Dragonstone, walking slowly past the dragon carving on the wall of the Chamber of the Painted Table. There is a shot of him looking as if he is walking into the mouth of the dragon. Is this symbolism or foreshadowing? I think it's definitely symbolic. I think that if you remember early on, this is when Tyrion's walking towards Daenerys. She's clearly not been eating. She's been keeping herself on her own. And Tyrion walks towards her to tell her that she is being betrayed. So as he comes there, there is the dragon carving on the wall, and it does look as if he's walking into the dragon's mouth. I think that is just a figurative thing about him approaching Dany. Dany is becoming the dragon. The imagery is very clear, particularly through this episode, that Dany is becoming the dragon. That's what the showrunners are wanting us to be seeing. That the bit later in the episode, when she does go on the rampage, we never see her up close, face to face. We just see Drogon. We just see the dragon. We see it from down below. It's almost as if she is part of the dragon. So that is what the image is, and so he is approaching her. I suspect, Peter, that the sort of the underlying question here is: does this mean that Dany is going to be sort of roasting Tyrion for his betrayal? I'll get onto that in a little bit more detail later, but I think that it basically, this is foreshadowing the fact that he is treading a very dangerous path, not just in approaching Dany then, but actually more broadly about what he's been trying to do for the last season or two. He is trying to manage her. Let's not forget, he's not advising her anymore. He is trying to manage events around her, which is very dangerous. John St. Baptiste. Hi there, John. For those who don't know, John has got a fantastic YouTube channel. It's a music-centered music channel. It's just, if you're a music nerd, do check it out. Hopefully one of the moderators will put a link over in the chat for you. But John's question is, I thought this idea was unique, but a number of others have come up with it as well. Do you think there is a biblical significance to Arya riding a pale horse at the end of the episode? So this is when Arya, at the end of episode 5, the horse comes up to her. I think this was Harry Strickland's horse, who was the leader of the Golden Company. And it's just there, standing there, and it's quite a ethereal moment, really. And she reaches out and touches it, and then she climbs on it and then rides off. Now, the question is whether or not that counts as a pale mare in a kind of a biblical sense. And on the back of pale mare, the rider was death. Yes, I think that there's probably a little bit of that symbolism going on there. But there's two things. In the books, the pale mare is a name for a disease. It's this incredible, it's like dysentery effectively, and it sweeps through cities. And the hint in the books is that this might well attack King's Landing. They missed out all of that in the show plot, but the kind of the feel seems to be that might go across to King's Landing, and so King's Landing, before it gets ravaged by war, will be ravaged by disease. I think what the showrunners were going for with that moment with the horse was actually the fact that this was a white horse that was dirtied, scarred, bruised by war, and yet it was the way out. It was hope. So if you scrubbed away everything there, then you had this beautiful white charger that was there. And I think that was supposed to be an analogy for Arya, who, as a young child, this beautiful, full of hope girl, and yet she's been bloodied and blackened and scarred and bruised by war and death and destruction, and this was offering her hope. I think that was the imagery they were going for. I mean, I could be wrong. I actually don't think that the horse will be important going forward. Maybe they'll show it again, but I don't think this was a big thing that they were going for. It was just a symbolic moment about Arya getting out, and getting out in a very hopeful way. And John Paul Quinlan says, do you think Jaime's and Arya's arcs were compromised in episode 5? And was Cersei's death disappointing? I turned my back to pick something up and missed it. So to pick up on those, so Cersei, was her end disappointing? I guess so. She was just destroyed by falling masonry, and after a huge amount of build up to it, then yes, I guess that was disappointing. Jaime's I'll come on to in a moment because I've got things to say about that. Arya's, I actually don't mind what they did with Arya's story arc, because coming into this season with Arya, her story seems to be taking her all the way to being the faceless assassin who enjoys killing people, largely emotionless, just doing what she does. This season, they have softened that. They've softened that again and again and again. And the moment that she had with the Hound was, I think, really quite a poignant moment. I think it worked really well for me, because this was when she was close to the end of her list, which was her original way of descending down into this arc of death. And the Hound stops and says, okay, do you want to be like me? Because this is where you're going. This is where your arc would take you, just obsessed with revenge and death. Is that what you want to be? Because if you don't do anything about it, that's what you will be. That was what the Hound was doing. And the Hound was basically saying, that's what I am. I can't stop this. I'm going on. I have to go and confront the mountain. That is my fate. But you have a chance to turn back. So what happened with Arya after they'd softened her or made her more human was to give her that moment of choice where she could then go, actually, no, that's not what I want for me. And so what happened after that is she then goes out, and instead of trying to kill people, she tries to save people's lives. So it actually, for me, I didn't mind what happened with Arya's arc. I think they built that up reasonably well. Jaime's, no. I think possibly the line I hated most in that episode, probably the season, possibly all of Game of Thrones, was when he said, I never really cared for the people of King's Landing. That for me was, if we are supposed to take it seriously, as I think we were, that is actually completely against his character arc, where he starts off being with this great act of caring about the people. And when he killed the Mad King, King Aerys II, that was what he was about. That was core to who he was. He didn't want to tell anyone because it was so central to who he was. And then he revealed it bit by bit to people like Brienne. So for him to go back and say, actually, you know what, I never really cared, is, for me, I didn't like that one little bit. So Cersei, yes, anticlimactic. Arya, I was actually okay with it. Jaime, didn't like it. But let's go back, have a look at a couple more super chats. Lucas Giorgio says Sansa manipulated Tyrion. She really learnt well. Yeah, so Sansa, she knew what was going to happen when she told Tyrion about it. She knew that Tyrion wouldn't be able to keep it to himself. He had to tell other people, and then the secret would be out. So yeah, she learned, and the implication was that she was doing the Littlefinger thing of just working out, okay, if I do this, then what's going to be the impact of this action? And she's manipulating things without personally being there and involved. So yes, definitely. Sylvia Sebrecht says, what if Dany was out of control of Drogon? We'll come into Dany in a lot more detail in just a moment, I assure you. Just to answer this one, I don't think that was the case. It seems to me very clear that what was happening was that she was sitting there, she made a decision, and she effectively pulled on the reins, the equivalent, and said, right, Drogon, let's go. It wasn't Drogon just getting out of control and Dany going, whoa, no, don't want it. If you look at the facial expressions on Daenerys, it's very clear that she makes a decision and then she goes for it. I don't think it was Drogon getting out of control. Halim Orlia says, a huge fan of your channel, Robert. Thank you. What type of twist can we expect next? Will Jon or Arya kill Dany? Yeah, I think this is the big thing. I think where all of this has taken us is that the characters who are left there in King's Landing, who have seen that, Jon, Tyrion, Arya, Davos, they are horrified. So they are not going to accept Dany now as ruler. That's the way it is. Dany only rules through fear. That is the only way it could possibly happen. So in terms of a twist, I don't know whether it now counts as a twist, but I think one of them will kill her. I think the most likely is Jon. That's the way it is. I don't think that Arya is going to get the chance to kill the Night King and Daenerys. Jon will be able to get closer to her than anyone else, and I think that he was so horrified by what happened. I think that is where he has to go, and that will be the end for. I think Jon after that will go, that's it, I'm out, I'm done. He's just going to go north. I talked about this episode 2 episodes ago. He had that invite from Tormund. Let's go north. He's gonna do what he has to do, and then he's gonna get out of there. So I think that is going to be the twist. Yodabolt says, do you think there's a chance Daenerys survives and they're going to do a serious head fake on us again? No, I mean, no is the short answer. This comes back to my idea. I've been talking about this for a year, 2 years. The Song of Ice and Fire is about two forces, ice and fire, both of which could destroy the world. And a lot of the time we were focusing on ice as being this thing that could destroy the world. But now we've seen this last episode, fire can also destroy this world. And the ending of this has to be with both forces pushed back. Ice has been pushed back, and fire now also has to be pushed back. And what that means, I think, is that Daenerys has to die. I think that 2 of the 3 dragons have already died. Either Drogon must die or Drogon must not be on the continent at the end of it. But however it works out, Westeros has to be free from both forces of ice and fire going forward. So that is how I see this happening. And so everything that is happening in season 6 is framed within that idea of ice and fire as being these equal and opposite forces. It wasn't that ice was the big baddie and fire had to be used to get rid of it. It's that there are 2 forces and both have to be eliminated. Peter Rowan says, the moral difference contrasting Battle of the Bastards versus the Bells is stark. Dany is not mad like Colonel Kurtz of Apocalypse Now. Why the genocide then? I'm going to come on to, if it's okay, Peter, I'm going to wrap up a whole load of questions about the sort of is Daenerys mad in a moment. What I will say now, though, in answer to this one, is I've got a video which I was hoping to get out today. It might now be tomorrow, which is exploring, I hope in quite a lot of detail, this idea of, is Daenerys mad? I think this is a huge oversimplification. I always spoil my videos on the next video coming out on these streams, but this is a huge oversimplification to say she's going mad. I think that what we need to see is that she is a character who is capable of both great, good things and terrible things. And what has happened is that there is this kind of perfect storm of things happening that has just pushed her to lash out. That's where she's at. And I think that we just need to understand that that moment was a unique, horrific moment for her. And that's why she did what she did. I agree the Battle of the Bastards was a lot more clear cut of good guys versus bad guys and all the rest of it. Ramsay Bolton was one of the least nuanced characters. Yes, incredibly well acted and brought to life and all the rest of it, but we were never in any doubt that Ramsay Bolton was one of the bad guys. Daenerys, has different sides to her, and it's not that we misjudged her, it's just that we only saw one side perhaps before, and now we see the full rounded who she is. Will Moss saying, will Dany kill Jon? The sweet is that the living survive the dead, the bitter is that everyone has to live under a murderous, tyrannical Dany. My guess is, as I've said a moment ago, that Jon will kill Dany rather than Dany Jon. Actually, I did a video 18 months ago on a completely different starting point, but it's Dany's visions in the House of the Undying in the books that led me to wonder whether or not Jon would kill her. That seems to me the logical conclusion of those visions, which it isn't spelt out there, but it seems to be the logical conclusion. So I think that this is foreshadowed a huge amount in the books that Jon will kill her. Her killing Jon almost makes sense from what the show has done. I honestly think if I were her, given what she's just done, you get rid of Tyrion straight away, you probably get rid of Jon straight away. But the question is, she probably, whether she still loves Jon, I think she probably does. And I think that would hold her back from actually killing Jon. The pragmatist in her would probably want him dead, but in reality, no, I don't think that's the case. Let's pick up on some questions from my patrons. Let's talk about Daenerys for a bit. So this was clearly the big twist, talking point in episode 5. So let's come at it from a few different angles. Krishna Bhargav says, can we look for any motivation Daenerys may have to do what she did, mad or otherwise? What would she possibly gain by killing off the subjects who she aims to rule? I think this is a fascinating subject. So I do not think that we should treat this as her making a rational decision. I don't think that's where we're at this moment in time. I think her facing this perfect storm of having lost all the people that she loved, all the people who cared about her, she lost the relationship that she'd building so much hope on. She spent all her time being advised not to do things. She's there angry, this thing that's been driving her all this time about getting hold of the Red Keep, the Iron Throne, and yet even after all of this, it's there in Cersei's control. That moment, she just lashes out, and I don't think that she was there being rational and making a rational decision and thinking, oh, hang on a moment, these are the people I'm going to be ruling. I don't think that's what was going on there. I think she was literally just caught up in that particular moment. That's what they'd been building up to, I think, the showrunners, and I think that's where they were getting at. Second question from Krishna Bhargav says, Maester Aemon in the book says that cold preserves and the heat destroys. While he's on his journey to Bravos with Sam, can we attribute that to her staying calm in Winterfell in retrospect after what we saw she did back in King's Landing? So yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I would view it more as a kind of a build up of events that left her at that moment when she was finally on her own with Drogon, victory is there within sight, and then what is she going to do? So it's the build-up of events. Up in Winterfell, she did what she had to do, but she was still, after that happened Rhaegal's death. After that happened Missandei's death. And Missandei, let's not forget, Missandei basically told her to do what she did. She said Dracarys. That was her final word, just saying, just burn them all, effectively. The Jon thing happened after that. So a whole load of things happened after Winterfell. And so I think rather than seeing it as in Winterfell she was okay, in King's Landing she wasn't, I would rather see it as this was a slow build-up of a perfect storm. Actually, I stole the phrase perfect storm from Aziz over on Twitter, but I think it's exactly right for this. It's the perfect storm of events and influences that just got her at that precise moment. Jack Hurst's asking if what Dany did is the worst thing that anyone's ever done in Westeros. This is quite hard to answer because the history of Westeros that we get is written by maesters who are broadly supportive of the Targaryen rule. Now, what's very clear is that Aegon the Conqueror did a huge amount of things that are quite similar. He melted Harrenhal, turned it into what it is that we saw on the show, in the books. Yes, he killed Harren the Black, but also a huge amount of other people while he's at it. A couple of places in Dawn, he just razed to the ground. He just melted them. So there was a huge amount that he did. Maegor the Cruel, we're told all of the people who were involved in building the Red Keep, so thousands of people, he just killed all of them because he didn't want them saying the secrets. There are some horrific things that have been happening in Westeros. So yes, what Dany did was terrible, but there are other things that are also terrible. This is particularly within the Targaryen family, but a lot wider. There are a lot of atrocities that have been committed over time. And John Lamb, thank you, by the way. I can see there's a lot of super chats coming in. I'll get to them in just 1 second. John Lamb from Patreon says, the last episode where Dany blitzkrieged King's Landing reminds me of the Battle of Berlin, when the Russian Red Army raped and pillaged the city, seeking revenge for the losses they had suffered. Like Dany, emotion, rage, and retribution took over. So, yeah, I think that this is the kind of thing that we need to look at, is that this is not unexpected. This happens in history. This happens in human history. This happens tragically in the world today. You get people who just flip with having had so many different things building up to a particular moment. That what makes what Dany did different is that she has a dragon. So when she has that moment when anger just boils over, that causes widespread damage. That causes tens, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths. But loads of other people, when they can't just fight back that anger, it doesn't cost that. What happened was, we saw what happens when somebody who is effectively sitting on a nuclear bomb, when they lose control, what happens there. Let's go over to the super chats. We've got a few that I just want to pick up on. So Anime Lover Nicole says, do you think Tyrion will get a trial? I think that so Tyrion will definitely get arrested in whatever way that is. So he betrayed Daenerys. Daenerys said, you're on your last chance. She will know he did because Jaime went missing, and if she asks where's Jaime, then the guards will say, well, Tyrion told us to go away and then he disappeared. And so it's going to be really obvious that Tyrion let him go. I think whether or not Tyrion gets a trial is going to be purely down to whether or not they want Tyrion to survive as a character, because Dany is in this mood. She didn't really give Varys a trial. He just got killed. She clearly didn't give the people of King's Landing a trial. They just got killed. The moment that she discovers that Tyrion has betrayed her again, she should just kill him. So it really is just a matter of, if they want him to survive, then they'll get her not to. That's pretty much it. Jared McKinnon says, can't tune in until tomorrow, but just wanted to pop in and show some support. Thank you. Left a question on Patreon for whenever you get to it. Yes, I saw that one. We will get to it at some point soon. Seattle Girl saying, thank you so much. You are great. Thank you. That's very kind. Vixtable says, do you think Brienne will end up pregnant? It's a good question. I don't know is the short answer. I think we are going to see Brienne. I think we're going to see, we'll get onto this again in a moment, but I think we are going to see a lot of the people we last saw in the north coming south. People like Sansa, she definitely won't allow any kind of decision on what happens next to happen without her. She's coming down. Sure, Sam will come down south as well. If Sansa comes down, then I think that Brienne will come down with her. Will she find that she's pregnant? It's possible. I would put it at like 50-50, to be honest. We've not really had any particular foreshadowing of it, other than it would be a good, an interesting mirror for the fact that Jaime apparently had a child on the way with Cersei, and actually he's also got a child on the way with Brienne. I think that will be a nice mirror. So I would like it, but I don't think that it's necessary for the plot going forward. Ricardo Guida says, do you think there'll be a confrontation between Dany and Sansa and Jon caught in the middle? I mean, I don't know, but my guess is that the iteration will be Dany at the beginning of the episode is going to do her thing. She will go there, and we saw it in the trailer. Yes, I'm going to do a trailer breakdown as well, probably on Saturday. So she will like come out and give her victory speech, and all the Dothraki will cheer and all the rest of it. I think she'll do that, and then she'll deal with Tyrion, and then she will demand that people bend the knee to her and all the rest of it. So I think that's what's going to happen first. And so I think that whatever happens with Tyrion and Jon and Davos and Arya will happen first, and then we're going to get Sansa coming down. So it's not going to be a matter of Sansa getting, Jon getting caught up in a sort of a battle between Sansa and Dany. I think that bit's going to be dealt with, and then Sansa's going to appear. It's a long way from the north. So even if Varys wrote and said, come down, it will take a little while for her to get down there. Bear Island Josh says, free super chat via YouTube Premium. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I've seen that these are going around somewhere. I was unaware of them, but thank you. I really appreciate that. Seattle Girl asks, is Dany unredeemable? I don't think that this, for me, this isn't a matter of whether someone is redeemable. I think this is a matter of she is a complex character capable of both good and evil. So it's not that she's there, can she be redeemed, all the rest of it. I think that we now see all the aspects of her character, and I think we now get to judge her in a three-dimensional way rather than just in a two-dimensional way. So I think that's what's going on with her, rather than her being on some kind of redemption path. Donald Peoples saying, I hated what happened to Jaime's arc, but I get it. Everyone doesn't overcome, and in the end, he was an addict that couldn't kick his drug. Also, Sansa knew what she was doing, talking about her execution. Yeah, so Sansa, I would agree. With Jaime, yes, I accept the possibility that Jaime could have been addicted to Cersei and therefore went back. That bit I had less of a problem with. The problem I had was the idea that he didn't care about the people, he just cared about Cersei, because that was not something that was there as a basis of who he was. That was the thing that riled with me, I have to say. Mod Mary, thank you so much, saying, did you notice the callback from the Battle of the Bastards scene with Harry Strickland in John's role? Laughed so hard when he turned and ran. Yeah, so the Golden Company were quite ineffective. Let's say that. So yes, there was this kind of idea that maybe he's just turn and run in the face of the people charging at him. He definitely just seemed to be completely what? Hang on a moment. So all of the Golden Company gone, and it's just me now. Yeah, I'm going to run. So yeah, I thought that was a comedic moment too. I really liked it, and yes, there was a bit of a callback there. I didn't think that was necessarily intended, but it was definitely there for those who could see it. Villanio says, would killing Danny also mean killing Drogon? I think this is the $1 million question, really. I think that with Drogon there, everything is up in the air. You cannot ignore the fact that anyone who tries to kill Danny will face Drogon. So even if Jon kills Danny, what does Drogon do? If Arya kills Danny, what does Drogon do? That is the elephant in the room, the dragon in the room. You can't get around it. So will they have to kill Drogon? Well, they could go one of two ways with this. Either, yes, somebody kills Drogon. The person who could do that most likely is Arya. If they don't want to kill Drogon, then the only thing around that they can do to get around this, I think, is for Drogon to just fly away. So there is some precedent for this, which is in Fire and Blood when we get Balerion the Black Dread, who's the kind of Drogon's an echo of Balerion the Black Dread, who just flies off, we think, to Valyria. It's never 100% clear. When someone, a random Targaryen, area Targaryen, gets on Drogon and Drogon just flies off. So that's the only way around this that I can see that might work, rather than just a well, I don't know. It's the big question for this episode, is what I'm trying to say, is that Drogon is a world beater. Drogon can do anything. Anyone who kills Danny, Drogon surely will be trying to get in the way of. See through. Wow, $300 Canadian. Wow, that is incredibly generous. Thank you so much. Saying, how will Jon prevent the Unsullied and Dothraki from rebelling after he kills Danny? I think this is the second. I was talking about Drogon as being like this big issue. I think that this is the second big issue, is what happens with them. And I think that the only way we can view this as being the situation has to have dramatically changed. If Drogon has gone, suddenly the Dothraki and the Unsullied will actually be in a minority, because that is the way that we got told that half of them had been killed in the battle at Winterfell, and then they come down here, a few more of them will have died. So actually they're not this force that can defeat anyone. And if the rest of Westeros is against them, then so then that's where we're at. See-Through saying, made a mistake with her super chat amount, wants to retract it. Of course, absolutely. Can you tell her to hit the 3 dots in the top corner of a super chat at the top of the chat? Absolutely. Do that. If you chose the wrong number, then hit the 3 dots on the corner of the super chat at the top of the chat. I hope that makes sense to you. Thank you for Chrissy for pointing that one out. It's easy to click the wrong buttons. I will get on to a few more super chats, not super chat, questions from my patrons about Danny. Jared McKinnon, I said I'd get onto your question, says, any thoughts on the idea that the bells triggered the destruction of King's Landing, that maybe a storyline from Fagon or John Connington's plot that George R. R. Martin told the showrunners, and they absorbed into Dany's story. Yeah, it's possible. I think so. For those who are show-only people, this idea of Fagon, this is a huge bit of plot that they've missed out. It's massive. You get this this person who is apparently another Targaryen claiming the throne, who has the Golden Company, who has John Connington, who used to be Hand of the King, who has a lot of stuff. He's probably going to get Blackfire, which is the sword of the Targaryen kings. And they have started an invasion before Dany has. So it's entirely possible that they might have taken King's Landing before Dany gets there. And what she does is raise King's Landing while he's there rather than Cersei. So that's entirely possible that all of that is working out. So the bells, I think, were simply a callback to the Battle of the Bells, which is something which is a battle in Robert's Rebellion. I think that was where the callback of that one is going, rather than a call forward, if it makes sense. And I do not think that the bells themselves were the trigger. I think that what the bells did was they stopped things and they gave her the opportunity to just see King's Landing. She hadn't seen King's Landing. This was the thing that she'd been aiming for all her life. Yes, she came down there for the meeting at the Dragon Pit, but as far as we can tell, she came into the Dragon Pit and just dropped down and caught everybody by surprise. She didn't stop and have a little look around King's Landing. This time she did. She landed, she looked, and it was, I mean, they said it in the kind of the behind the scenes little video or whatever they call it, that it was the sight of the Red Keep that was the trigger. That was the thing. She stopped. The bells caused everything to stop, gave her the opportunity. She looked at the Red Keep, which was this castle that was built by her ancestors, which had the Iron Throne, which Cersei still controlled, and that just made her angry. And that added to all of the other things were what pushed her to do what she did. Leathery Wings says, will Dany feel remorse for what she's done, or will she remain the Mad Queen and justify her actions? Will she again try to convince Jon to remain by her side? So I think that she, pardon me, I think she will try and justify it. She justified it, or she tried to justify it beforehand in episode 5, if you go back and have a look. She was trying to justify it. She was the whole reason for her talking to Cersei, apparently, was so that the people will know whose fault it was when I burn them, which is a kind of a weak justification. Then she gave another justification when Tyrion was talking to her later in episode 5. So she came up with these things. I think that she will come up with a justification in some way. Remorse, I don't think we're going to see much of that. If we try and convince Jon to remain by her side, I think she will demand some kind of public display of him saying that she's queen, whether he has to bend the knee publicly or something like that. I think that is where she's going to be going. Deborah Evans says, or asks, has Dany destroyed the wheel? Will she actually succeed in being the ruler of Westeros? Well, on the second bit of that, yes, I think she has succeeded in becoming the ruler of Westeros. I think, however, she probably will only be the ruler of Westeros for a few hours or a few days. I don't think it's going to be for very long at all. I think that she will achieve her aim. I still like the idea, like that vision we saw when she reached out and nearly touched the Iron Throne and then didn't get it. I still like the idea that that's going to happen, that she will nearly get the Iron Throne and then fall slightly short. But I suspect, given what happened, that they will now have it where she gets the Iron Throne, but just not for very long. And has she destroyed the wheel? The wheel, this is a quote from her, that she's going to destroy the wheel. The way that she sees it is the wheel is all the different houses of Westeros, each fighting for control for who's going to be in charge. And so her idea when she says this of destroying the wheel is her being sort of setting in place Targaryen rule forever. So it's the end of this, the great game, the Game of Thrones. That's what her idea of the wheel is, destroying the wheel. So has she done that? I wonder whether she might, in the end, achieve that, but not in the way that she thinks. That if they can get the governance structures right going forward, then I think that she won't. Well, if she fails, if she does not rule going forward, and then the powers that be after that create the right structures going forward, then that might indeed break the wheel. But I don't think Dany is going to do it in the way that she intended. Let's go back to some super chats. So we've got Cindy saying, do you think Dany will imprison Jon like Ned in S1? It's possible, but I think actually, as I said, I think it's much more likely that she will demand that he recognize her as queen. I think that's the way it's going to go. Helen Sanchez says, could Aerys's plan, Arya's plan, still be in motion? Did he leave those rings behind for little Martha as payment? So I think this is, sorry, Varys, I assume this is. Did he leave those rings behind for little Martha as payment? Yeah, possibly. I don't think that his plan is still in motion. I think this was just us being shown what his plan was rather than anything else. Hunter 1 Alpha 1 says, any chance Dany sentences Jon to death, but then Drogon won't carry out the sentence because he's the true king? Targ, blood, etc. Jon for the chair 2019. I don't, well, no. So the dragons historically haven't, they're intelligent animals, but they don't seem to care about who the true king is out of Targaryens. If you go back through Fire and Blood, the Targaryen dragons attack each other all the time when their riders want them to. So I think that this isn't, including attacking people who are probably technically the true heir. So I don't think that's what's going to be happening. I think that, as I said, either Drogon gets killed by someone like Arya or Drogon just flies off. Those are the two options that I can see. Drogon cannot hang around. That's not the way that as a plot imperative, I don't think that's the way it will work. Chenuviel Greenleaf, great name. Didn't see a question, but thank you so much. Scott Koenig, again, didn't see a question, but thank you very much. Missed super chat from Scott McCloy. I might get to it in a moment, but anyway, Dany bombing King's Landing reminded me of Truman dropping the bombs. Thoughts? So yeah, so this is at the end of World War II. Harry Truman, the American president, ordered bombs to be dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, first nuclear attacks in history. These killed tens of thousands, I think, of innocent people. It might have been hundreds of thousands. It was horrific. It ended the war, but it was horrific. So yes, there is an element of that. I think that dragons have been presented as the nuclear weapons of Westeros. That is the way that they're set up. So that is a good analogy. I don't think it's a perfect analogy, but in terms of the way that we understand it in our world, the way that this was killing innocent civilians, the way that it did end the war, then yes, I think that is entirely a fair analogy. Fiona Rangel says, could Tyrion still be outed as a Targaryen? Oh. So this is a theory which has been doing the rounds for a long time, the idea that Tyrion is a secret Targaryen. For those who don't know, there is a lot in the books that hints at it. There is, first of all, there's the fact that he with Danny and John has a kind of a similar story. His background is quite similar. Mother died in childbirth, etc. And he, in the books, has dragon dreams, which seems to be quite a Targaryen trait. And there is a little bit of history there about the Mad King, Aerys II, clearly, at the very least, took a fancy to Joanna Lannister, Tyrion's mother. And so there's a hint that there might have been more that happened there. So is it going to happen on the show? No, I don't think they're going to go down that route at all. I think that they've just left that out completely. Is it going to happen in the books? Well, possibly. I think it's more likely it's going to be hinted at and actually delivered as an important plot point. I think it will just be a thing where we're left going, well, maybe he was, and then have to work out what that might mean. Alex Mora says, what's more disappointing, season 8 or Man United? Guys, this hurts. Next season. Bridget Walsh, keep up the great work. Thank you. What was the point of people telling Danny she can't get pregnant and then bringing it up again and again, and John saying, are you sure? It feel like it was a lot of build up. Yeah, it does feel like it's a lot of build up. I'm not going to write this one off yet, for the simple reason that if at the very end she turns around to John and says, and I'm currently carrying your child, or something like that, that would add a huge amount of pathos and pain, particularly if we get into this idea that John kills her. So I'm not going to write it off, but yes, there was a lot of build up to that idea. The only payoff at the moment we have is this idea that actually Daenerys' children are her dragons, and therefore, when the dragons go, that is going to, when the dragons are killed, that is going to impact on her in the same way they tried to mirror her with Cersei, in the same way Cersei lost her children, then she kind of lost her way, and that's what they were kind of trying to mirror with Daenerys. So yes, I agree with you. I'm not going to write it off yet, but that's the payoff they've given us so far. One moment. Quick top up. Eduardo Castillo says, Dany was told that the people make secret toasts to her rule and that they would turn on Cersei once she hit the shore. Could we not presume that she saw the people as the enemy, with me or against me? Yeah, possibly. I think that, yes, she was told this. She was told this, though, really by Viserys and by people who were trying to curry her favor. Jorah basically put her right on that and said, you know, the people don't care. The people care about their harvest. They care about their children. They care about living. They're not caring about who rules them. So I think she was put right on that point. I think that she was not, and this is part of the direction that they were trying to do with Dany being like way up there, and everything we saw was not about her. It was about the impact on the people. She was not, if we'd watched it the other way, we'd have seen that actually the people were almost nothing to her. She was just burning the city, and that's what she was thinking. So I think that was the point that it wasn't that she saw them as the enemy so much as she was just, they were nothing. It was just her letting out her anger. Melissa L. Gill, will Dany feel bad about what she did? I just kind of covered that one a moment. I don't think she will. It's possible she might, but I don't think she will. All the hints we've got is that she, as all Targaryens, thinks that she operates on a different moral code to anyone else. It's just, you know, the Targaryens do what they do. They take what they want with fire and blood, or they take what is theirs, or they believe is theirs with fire and blood, and that is where we're going to go. I also agree about Drogon. Arya will kill him with an arrow, which is why she has practiced so much with her bow. Yeah, I think that's, as I say, that's one of the two possibilities I can see for this. Haven't seen Arya with a bow and arrow down south yet, but it's possible. Blake P100 says, no question, just wanted to say you're awesome. Thank you, that's very kind. Experiment 53 says Masonry didn't kill Cersei, Danny did. Yeah, I mean, I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek when I say Masonry killed Cersei and Jamie. Clearly it was the Drogon and which Danny causing the damage to the Red Keep, which caused the falling Masonry. So yeah, I agree is the short answer. But I think I like the idea that it's Masonry, if only because I don't like the idea that Euron gets to brag about killing Jaime Lannister. That made no sense to me. Nicholas Ferrara says, Robert, love the work you do. Thank you. Was just curious if you think there has been a ton of foreshadowing with Arya and her bow dating back to season 1. Any chance she uses it for a major kill, Dany or Drogon? So yeah, this is linking up with the previous question. I don't think there's been foreshadowing of her with a bow so much as the fact that they showed that she is competent with a lot of weapons. I think that they showed that she can use the staff, that she can use the dagger, she can use needle, her sword, and she can use a bow. So I think what they're trying to show is that she could adapt to any circumstance. The bow thing, yes, they brought it back for episode 4 or whatever it was, but she didn't get into King's Landing with a bow. So she would have to find one in order for that to work. So foreshadowing, yeah, maybe a bit, but generalized rather than specific to her using a bow to kill someone. Amanda McClaskey, thank you so much for the super chat. Didn't see a question, but thank you. Julio Achaeus or Julio Achaeus, what do you think Stannis' endgame will be in the Winds of Winter? So this is a book question. Stannis is very much alive in the books. He is not dead. Now, he is currently stationed outside Winterfell, very much in the way that he was in the show. I think his end game is going to be quite similar. I think he will be another king up in the north, but I can't see him surviving. I can't see him playing this huge role that I know some people would like him to. I think that basically we are going to get a roughly similar thing where we get the Boltons and we get Stannis, and they're going to fight off against each other. Stannis, I think, will have to go in order for Melisandre to get the understanding that she thinks that Jon is the king in the north. Oh, sorry, Jon is Azor Ahai. Yes, the whole prophecy thing wasn't played out in the show, but the fact that it drives Melisandre is the important point here. So what I'm going to do, incidentally, with the books is I'm going to dig into this. And I've not really done kind of prediction stuff for the books yet. I've done a lot of explanatory stuff about what happened in the past. So I will get probably during the autumn, I'm still, fingers crossed, hoping that we're going to get the Winds of Winter at the end of this year. Maybe it'll be a little bit later than that, but I think it's possible. I am going to start doing a few more predictions videos for what might be happening there as well. HD3 says, how about Bran warging Drogon and torching Dany's troops? Possible. Yeah, it's possible. The idea of warging into a dragon, we've not really seen that as a possibility. Yes, I guess the Night King kind of did in a way, in his kind of like, so his powers seem to be a sort of a dead version of Bran's powers. He can control people, he can go into the astral plane and all the rest of it. So he seems to be sort of like a different version, which seems to imply that Bran potentially could. I don't think they're going to go down that route. That's just my own gut instinct. I think that the two options I've got for Drogon are the two that I'm going to go with, is that either he gets killed by someone like Arya or he flies off. Anime Lover Nicole says, what did you think about the Dane Ball? Is that the Clegane Bowl? I think I find it hard to get excited by it, and I have to admit I quite liked the way that they used the Hound as a way to show Arya what her fate would be if she carried on down that path. I liked that. I would have preferred it to be more of a mercy killing, so that we actually see the Hound as Sandor come to a sort of a conclusion in some way. His story had come to a conclusion. They ended it with fire, with Sandor pushing Gregor into fire. That kind of worked. Yeah, I didn't get excited by it. It wasn't a thing that it didn't exceed my expectations. It didn't fall short of them. It was just exactly what I thought they were going to do. So I don't think there's not much more I can say about that one. Vigstable says maybe Drogon dies from exhaustion at the start of the episode. Yeah, that would certainly solve a lot of problems. I don't think so. Christina Pratt says, if Jon stabs Dany, will she become a new Night King? Oh, no, not unless he stabs her with dragonglass in her heart in front of a weirwood tree, which appears to be the magic that created the Night King in the first place. He is more likely to be stabbing her with a Valyrian steel blade in front of the Iron Throne. So I don't think that's where it's going to go. I like the thinking, but I don't think that by the logic that the show has created, that was what caused the creation of the Night King. To say actually, and a completely different thing caused the Night Queen, I can't see that. Fiona Rangel says, should sleep. I'm addicted to your chats, though. Thank you. Yeah, I should sleep. It's getting late, but guys, I'm going to carry on, keep on going with this one because I'm loving these questions. David Stave says, free super chat from YouTube Premium. Enjoy. Thank you. These free super chats are a great thing. Kitty Cat says, meow, 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 meow. Right back at you. John Schweers says, I love your balanced takes on this. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Danielle Montoya says, thank you for all your content and all your work. What are you going to miss most about the show? Oh, I don't know what I'm going to miss most. I think what is rare is a show that I do not know how it's going to end. And a lot of shows are adaptations from books, particularly kind of things I enjoy watching. But this, because it has gone beyond the books, I have an inkling of where it's going to go because I can read what's happening with the characters. I've got an idea. George R. R. Martin plants a lot of hints and foreshadowing in his books. I've got an idea, but I do not know exactly. And what I will miss is that feeling on a Sunday night of just thinking, I think I know what's going to happen here, but I don't know exactly. And then seeing the best production, whatever you might think of the writing, the production in Game of Thrones is astonishing. The best production there is in the business, just laying it out before me. I think that is what I will miss more than anything else. Luke Partridge says, actually, I picked that one up earlier, I think. So is it possible Jon kills Dany? Drogon doesn't react because he's a Targaryen and bonds with Jon, who uses it to chase off the Unsullied and Dothraki and then sets Drogo free and retires to the north. So I picked up on bits of this. So I think Jon will kill Dany. I think Drogon will react. I don't think that he will not react to the death or the murder of the person that Drogon is bonded with. Jon being a Targaryen shouldn't, I'm going to say the showrunners won't go down this route, but it shouldn't make any difference to this. Dragons kill other Targaryens all the time. Jon just jumping onto Drogon shouldn't work. I think, yes, the Dothraki and the Unsullied probably also will need to leave the continent at the end of it. But the last bit, Jon retiring to the north, definitely agree. Been thinking this for a couple of episodes now. I think that's the way this is going to go. Linda Presuta says, saw a theory that Dany wasn't controlling Drogon, that it was Bran walking Drogon through R'hllor, controlling him. And that was why we don't see her face after she takes off towards the Red Keep. Thoughts. Now, I love this, but no, it was very clear that the bit that we did see of Dany's face, I think anyway, the bit that we did see of Dany's face was that she was there, she was looking at the Red Keep, and she just got this determined look on her face, and then she just did this, let's go. And that was what was there. If this was someone else randomly controlling Drogon, then she would have just been sort of looking around randomly, and then Drogon would have lifted off and she'd go, whoa, what's going on? We didn't see that at all. So I think that this was her doing it. I think a lot of these kind of was somebody controlling Drogon? Was Drogon doing it themselves? I think these are coming from a position of not wanting to accept that Dany did this, which I completely understand, because Dany is a character that has been close to all of us for a very long time, and so it is not nice to contemplate it. But I think that's what the showrunners are saying. This is something that she did. We have to work with this. This is not the idea that someone walked into Drogon and did it doesn't seem to be backed up by any of the evidence of what we actually saw. Terry Pring says, there were touches of madness from the beginning, but they were framed within Dany being a hero. The Mad Queen theory is only out of place because she's been seen as the good guy till now. It's a plot device, yeah. So I kind of agree with this. I think that what we have to do is we see that she has clearly been framed as one of the good people, and that's why it's shocking. But all the way through, when we look back on it, then she has both of these elements to her character. She is the person who can be releasing all the slaves, who can be really proactive, and who can care about the victims of all of the Dothraki, sort of just raising across cities and all the rest of it. She has that compassion, and yet she also has the dark side that. When I was researching the video I'm about to release, it was very obvious that actually there's not really been a city since season 2. There's not really been a city she's spent any significant amount of time in that she's not threatened to burn to the ground. It's always there in the back of her mind. That's just how it is with her. She did it with Karth. She did it with Meereen, Yunkai, Astapor, Volantis, King's Landing. She's threatened to burn them all down. It's not a new thing. It's just we have that thus far treated as just words, but it turns out that actually it was a little bit more than that. Paige Popejoy says, any possibility that Bran walked Drogon after the bells, giving the appearance of Dany being responsible for the carnage? We see no shots of her after. Yeah, I've covered this. I think I don't see any evidence of this. Maybe they will just completely blindside us all and it was Bran. I think Bran is playing a game, but I don't think that he was controlling it. And we will find out very soon in episode 6 if that's the case, because Dany will go off and go, what were you doing, Drogon? How dare you? I don't think that's any of the hints that we got from the trailer. I think she is there being as this victorious queen because she thinks she has done this. JP says, many channels are giving this season very low ratings. I would like to know how you rate this season thus far on a scale of 1 to 10. I love your channel and give you a 10. Thank you very much. That's very kind. What I said at the beginning, and I apologize, I think that we lost a bit of it. My internet went down for a little while, so perhaps you didn't get this. This channel is an explanatory channel rather than a sort of review, rating, critique channel. So I view this very much as a way to try and add value to people's viewing experience, to give a little bit extra history, maybe a little bit of insight, maybe a few looking at things from slightly different angles. That's what this channel is about, rather than saying whether or not I liked a particular episode or anything like that. So that you're not going to see that on this channel. That's not to say I don't have views on how Game of Thrones has been and all the rest of it. I am not blind to the faults of this season. There have been some faults. The things I have been most annoyed by have been things like the lack of giving the White Walkers anything more than just this thin veneer of a reason. Just that they came across as being very two-dimensional. Things like what happened with Jaime's arc, stuff like that. Those are the things that have annoyed me. And what I would say is, in terms of episodes, I wouldn't view them individually, particularly this season. I would see that as a whole and how it works as a whole. And so I don't think we can rate the season as a whole until we've seen the last episode, because it might show us, when people have been asking questions about what was Bran walking into Drogon, that would change our way of viewing episode 5 completely. So I don't think I'm going to be able to say what my view is of the season as a whole until this point, other than saying the thing which I think should go without saying, which is the production has been astonishing. It has looked beautiful all the way through. The acting has been on point. The set, the costumes, the music, all of the production of this has been astonishing. Absolutely rate that very highly. Justin Allen Blackfire just saying 20. Thank you very much. Sorry, second one saying, oops, did it wrong the first time. No question. I just love everything you do. Thank you. Thank you for lecturing my bachelors in ice and fire. You're very, very welcome. Renoa Wildling, thank you so much. Alberto Molina just saying thanks for your work. Thank you. Wayne McLeod says, a wolf asks, do you think Bran will end up as ruler of the Seven Kingdoms? I hope not. The problem we have is that we're actually now, after lots of character deaths, we're actually down to quite a minimal number of characters. So if you follow the logic that I follow, which is that there are now enough people that would not support Dany, that she will have to die this next episode. If you also follow the view that I have, which is that Jon is going to have had enough and he's going to leave, then he's out of the picture as well. That then leaves, if we are going to have an overall ruler, very few options. Maybe Tyrion's going to survive, maybe Sansa's going to survive, Bran, Arya, I'm sure, won't want it, Davos won't want it, Sam won't want it. So yes, you're a very small number. I would have said, until 2 episodes ago, I would have said there is 0% chance of Bran ending up ruling. The only thing that has changed my mind is when Tyrion says to him, you don't want to rule, do you? You don't, and Bran sort of says, no, I don't want anything much these days. That was the first point. The moment that they start actually explicitly saying he doesn't want to rule makes you go, well, maybe he will end up ruling. So, because that's the way they seem to work. So that's the first moment that made me go, oh, maybe. And Bran is meddling in who is ruling the Seven Kingdoms, because he was, before we got into the whole Night King business, he was making sure that Sam told Jon that he was the rightful king. And that only matters in the context of, not of what happened with the battle with the Night King. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. That only impacts on flicking over the first domino. He tells Jon, Jon tells Dany, Jon tells Sansa, Sansa tells Tyrion, and so on. And that was just pushing it so Bran is it trying to impact on this, and it will be interesting to see where that goes. I say I hope not, because it's not Bran. This is the Three-Eyed Raven. So I would prefer there to be some sort of council. I wouldn't rule it out, but that's just my personal preference. Ramsey Suki says, is it plausible that Drogon went rogue and not Daenerys? I think I've covered this one already. Possible, but I don't think so. Anime Lover Nicole says, did you watch the Eurovision? Any faves? I didn't watch the Eurovision, no, so I do not have any faves, I'm afraid. For those who don't know Eurovision, you're probably best not knowing. It's a very European thing that would take a long time to explain. G. Joe says, Tyrion betraying Varys feels very out of character. Thus, they were on the same page about Daenerys' instability. I don't see the point. Yeah, they didn't draw this out very well. I think that Tyrion, at the beginning of the episode, was still of the view that he could manage Daenerys. He could prevent her from doing the things that she ended up doing. So that was where he was at, and he was still loyal to her. Varys clearly changed his mind and was trying to kill her. So Tyrion going up and saying that Varys has betrayed you was actually, it kind of made sense in that. And then he changed Tyrion then sort of changed his mind a bit, I guess, by the fact when he discovered that Jaime was there as a prisoner. So that was where that one went down. But at the very beginning of the episode, then we saw it hangover from episode 4, in fact. There was a difference of opinion there. Tyrion begged him not to go ahead with it, and Tyrion at that point was still very much loyal to Daenerys. Ella Louise Taylor says, will Tyrion survive episode 6? Thanks for the great videos. I hope so, and as I say, I think this is purely whether the showrunners want him to, because Daenerys gave him his final warning. He should be gone. There's no way around that. There's nothing, no reason for her not to kill him. She killed Varys without a trial. She killed all the people of King's Landing without a trial. There is no reason for her not to kill him on the spot. So if he survives, it is purely because they want him as a character to survive. ATLS Most Blunted One saying Dany's pregnancy hormones caused her to snap. Yeah, no. I think that what was going on there was not, and I don't want to be drawn into this idea that this was because she was some kind of crazy woman. I don't think that that's what was going on here. This was as the phrase again I'm going to use, it was a perfect storm of all of the things that have been building up, and any one of them would destroy a person. That your best friend is murdered in front of you would destroy a person. Your children are killed. One of them is brought back from the dead and attacks you. This would destroy a person. All of these things building one on top of another would destroy a person. The thing that you've built your life around turns out it's actually not true. You're not the heir to the throne, someone else is. These things are huge, and they come out one after the other, just a matter of a few days, a few weeks between each of them. That is what it really was. And then it was only when she had a chance to breathe that suddenly it all built up into this rage and anger. Sylvia Sebrecht says, noticed how almost every hug this season was made with hands in the neck. Any ideas about the meaning? I don't know. I've not thought about that. It's a good spot. I haven't really thought about it yet. I guess that Jaime and Cersei did that, and Jon and Daenerys. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's something I've not really thought about. My instinct is that it's nothing. I will happily have a look at it, see whether there is anything more to it. It seems to me one of those things like when a couple of seasons ago, Cersei was on that map room that they've got in King's Landing. Cersei was standing on the neck, and Jamie was on the fingers, and everyone said, "So this is Valonqar confirmed," and it was just happened to be where they were standing. So I think that's a lot more what it was about than anything else. So short answer is no, but I like the thinking. Let's go back to a couple of questions from my patrons. Jodie Swanson says, I'm wondering how Dany's choices and actions this episode might compare to Aegon the Conqueror's when he centralized rule over the Seven Kingdoms. Might his have been more calculated? Was he also likely to have been perceived as ruthless or mad, a foreign invader, and yet now is the stuff of legend and history? Yeah, so he did a lot of stuff that is quite similar. He basically came in there. The Targaryen invasion was them and 3 dragons, a few extra soldiers, but basically was them and 3 dragons. So what he did was he burnt down castles, he razed other castles to the ground, and then destroyed armies with his dragon, and everyone else bent the knee, except for Dawn, of course. They didn't, and it was a long time before they did. But there is a deliberate echoing of Aegon I in the character of Dany. That is the point that they've been trying to show, certainly in the books. That's the kind of echo that they've been trying to show. Was he more calculated? It's hard to say because we've only got the history books, so we do not know. Some of it, yes, some of it, no, is the short answer. When his sister was killed in Dawn, it would appear, just got angry and flew over there and just destroyed a few Dornish castles and settlements, just completely to the ground. So that's some of it was him not in control at all. Some of it probably was him and being quite calculated. James Sidney says, I've read a well-crafted opinion that the last 2 seasons would make a lot more sense if the show introduced Aegon, who we talked about a moment ago. Assuming Fagon was sitting on the throne and the Crownland's small folk loved their beloved prince's son, I could totally see Dany burning the city to the ground in a rage and spite. Having Fagon would also give Varys something meaningful to do in lieu of an ill-contrived coup attempt. So, yeah, Varys in the books is largely supportive of this other Targaryen, or possible Targaryen, who is claiming to be the eldest son of Rhaegar Targaryen, so therefore ahead of both Dany and Jon in the line of succession. Whether he's actually that person is a completely different matter. Probably isn't, but that's another thing entirely. Now, it's entirely possible that he and his army will capture King's Landing. If he does, it's entirely possible that there might be an outbreak of some diseases there. And if it was, it's entirely possible that Dany, when she comes across there, will find herself in confrontation with him rather than Cersei. Cersei, if she does get caught up with Euron, might not be based in King's Landing at that point. So yes, it makes sense. They were trying to, the build up to what Dany did was basically more about her and her character than anything else in the books, in the show. So that's where they were going with that one. Dracarys Noir, final question from my patrons about Dany, says, at this point, could Dany be the common enemy that actually unites all of Westeros at the expense of her life? Seems like a bittersweet ending for Dany, that her goal would be accomplished and she wouldn't be alive to witness it. Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I think that after her death, we are going to see, well, this is the way I see it panning out, is that she will die, probably at the hands of Jon. Drogon will have to be dealt with in some way. I've already talked about the two possibilities there. And then the question is, what next? I think the showrunners will show us a bit of what next, but um, probably not in huge amounts of detail. And that will have to happen with Sansa coming down and talking about it. If they introduce Sansa, then they will have to show us some of the other lords there. I really hope we get to see Yara again. She just disappeared at the beginning of the season, and we haven't seen her again. She is apparently now in control of the Iron Islands. Euron is now dead, so she's the ruler of the Iron Islands. She will have to decide what to do. There are other characters like Edmure Tully, like Robin Arryn, who we've not seen for a long time. I'd love for them to come back in, have some kind of a council. If they can agree on something, then yes, indeed, you're entirely right that Dany could unite people after her death. That's quite an ironic way of looking at it. Let's go back to a few super chats. Sarah Pryor says Tyrion warned Dany that one well-placed arrow could destroy or could kill a dragon. Yes, this is very true. So if we're looking for foreshadowing of a bow, an arrow killing Drogon, then yes, that's right. I think that was more foreshadowing of what happened with Rhaegal, is that it was just a couple of good shots got rid of Rhaegal out of the sky. Experiment 53, what do you think will happen with Grey Worm? I think that he will stand loyally beside her, and then when she dies, either one of two things again. Either he goes on the rampage and is killed, or the powers that be there allow him and the Dothraki and the Unsullied effectively to return home. Because let's not forget, Dany took these people away from their homelands to come over and invade Westeros. Then they have no connection with Westeros. It doesn't seem that they sort of settled down there. They've just been following Dany around, doing what she wants them to. It makes sense for their end game is to go back to Essos. Whether Grey Worm will be there to lead them, I don't know, because as I say, two things. Either he goes a little bit Dany, so to speak, in the wake of her death and will be killed there on the spot, or he will lead them back again. I think that's, if I had to guess on one, that is probably, well, maybe a combination of the two, actually. He might go a little bit crazy, and then he might lead them back. J Star says, which story arc would you most like to change? Possibly Jaime, possibly Euron, because the book Euron is so good. Not a good person, but just so charismatic, so interesting, and changing the whole story as a whole. So I think probably him. Of the people currently alive on the show, who would you pick as Queen or King? Who would be on their small council, and what would their roles be? Thanks for all the great content. Thank you. That was Philip Wolf. I think the best rulers will be the people who won't be ruling. Someone like Davos, he certainly would be the best hand of the king or queen. I think, for me, I don't actually want there to be a monarch, because regardless of whether the Iron Throne's there, and I think it will be destroyed one way or another, regardless of whether it's there, the fact that you have got a monarch actually at the end would actually defeat the whole purpose of this, because the point is that it's the fighting over who's going to be king or queen that is causing all of these problems. And for them just to end up with another king or queen, it seems to me to be just laying out more problems for the future. I think that they need to have some kind of thought about a way forward from all of this. Doesn't involve having an absolute ruler. Dan Marr says the long night never happened theory. Maybe. Oh, so the long night never happened. The long night, yeah, it did happen. I did a video with this, with Secret of the Citadel a long time ago. This idea that perhaps the long night isn't actually, it didn't actually happen. It's just Bran going back in time. It's a bit complicated, but going back in time with the stories of what happened in our story, that in our present time, and then seeding them in the past as warnings about what is going to happen in the future. I think no, I don't think they're going to go with that. It was a great fun video, and really turned into working out what is the nature of time in the world of Ice and Fire. How does it work? And we came up with this idea of being this kind of closed loop system, which again is an entirely different video. But while I'm talking about Secrets of the Citadel, I did promise that over on Blaze Manga's channel in about 20 minutes or so, there's going to be a live stream with Kyle, Azora Hype, and Secret of the Citadel Gemma, who are all excellent people. And I don't know if we're going to be finished by then here. I suspect not. We've still got quite a few questions to get through. But when we're finished here, if you want to go over there, I would highly recommend it. As I say, they're all excellent people. GOT Nista says, who is most likely to be pregnant, Dany, Arya, or Brienne? I think Arya, no. Brienne, possibly. Dany, yeah, I think it would work. I think if I had to pick one, it would add extra poignancy if it's Daenerys, and she reveals it to Jon just before the end. That would be horrible. Good, but horrible. Patrick Dean says, glad Jorah didn't live to see what Dany has done. Yeah. It would be, I think he would still stand by her, but still, he would probably advise her. It would be her advice beforehand. That's the thing that I think is most important here. Alex Mora says, how do you see the long night happening in the books? So this long night, I think it'll be a lot less about one person, the Night King. This is about, and I think it'll be a lot more about trying to understand what is going on. So the way that the show basically boiled it down to was that whoever was the best fighter won. Arya had the skills to kill the Night King, and she did it. If she didn't know that the only way to kill the Night King was a Valyrian steel dagger in the heart in front of a weirwood tree, then it was a pure accident on her part. I don't think we're going to end up with an accident ending it all. I don't think we're going to end up with this just being an army relentlessly moving without understanding why, other than just a generalized feeling of revenge. So I don't think that's where I think we're going to get a whole lot more trying to understand what is going on and what is the history behind this, and therefore what it is that can happen to try and reverse it. That is where I think we're going to get to. And so how do we reverse the curse, if that's what it is, on the assumption that it's going to be very similar than being created by the Children of the Forest. So I think that's how I see that one go. Scott Koenig says, it's possible that Dany's dragon felt her anger just like Bran's wolf felt his anger with Jojen. There is some precedent for it. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think it was just Dany. I think that Drogon also felt the anger, and it was complicit in it because there is a strong bond between the two of them. Mod Mary 1 says, we've seen the bitter. What will be the sweet? Oh, good question. I think the sweet will be partly it will be partly the end of the wars. I think that's what the big thing is it sounds quite conceptual. I think it will be all of that has done now. The Army of the Dead has been pushed back. The threat from dragons has been pushed back. So I think that is going to be the big thing. They can just, for the first time all the way through this, they can just draw a deep breath and go, okay, how do we actually try and manage this going forward? I think there will also be some sweet endings. So Sam and Gilly will be providing some sort of sweetness. I think that we'll get Yara's story is going to be a good one. Good as in, I think that's going to be a happy and strong ending for her. I think it's going to be more. I don't like the word bittersweet because I think that it then tries to get us to do this guessing game of what is bitter and what is sweet. And it's more this kind of feeling of hope that I think we're going to have. I think we're going to end with a feeling of hope, new beginnings. The old stuff has ended and we've got hope moving forward. So that's where I would go rather than thinking so much about the word bittersweet, which incidentally, George R. R. Martin quite often follows up by talking a bit about the scouring of the Shire, which we've kind of seen a parallel to here, dealing with the secondary issue rather than just there's a big bad that has to be defeated and then that's the end of it. Lady Tia says, just support and appreciation for you and your mods. Thank you so much. And yes, moderators, thank you. You've been doing an amazing job again today. Thank you. I really appreciate all you do. Jeffrey Crimin says, how does Drogon die? Can he be allowed to survive? Yeah, so this is what I've been trying to say is that I think there are two ways. Either somebody kills Drogon, and the only way that that could happen, I think, is with an arrow through the eye, or Drogon just flies off, which sounds completely random. But if Drogon, if Dany is dead, if Drogon has expressed his anger, what does Drogon do? Drogon no longer has a bonded Targaryen. Where would Drogon go? Well, we saw the last time Drogon was left to his own devices, he seemed to fly off to Old Valyria. So I think that that is a possibility of where he will go this time. Stacey May says, do you agree that there's a similar plot with the Lord of the Rings, Frodo at the end putting on the ring? Yeah, I like that. It's I think the bigger analogy with the Lord of the Rings tends to be with Jon and Sam, Frodo and Sam, but the clear analogy is between the Iron Throne and the One Ring, the symbol of power, which drives war and hatred and all the bad things. And so I think that is the clear thing there. Dany, if anything, I would say she appears more like a surprise Saruman character. Is that it's that you thought this person was one of the good guys, but actually they're not. And so at the end of it all, they need to be weeded out as well. So that is more where I sort of see it, rather than Frodo putting on the ring at the end is more about the protagonist failing. And that is closer to where we're at with this, I think. So actually, it's not that Frodo didn't suddenly turn evil. Frodo just, all of his strength had gone, and that was, he couldn't resist any longer. That was where that one was going. I like the analogy. I think that there are lots of Lord of the Rings analogies going on here. We can attack it from various different angles. Ryan Furland, thank you so much. Didn't see a question, but thank you. JP saying, I agree, thanks, thank you. Donald Peoples saying, how will Bronn get his castle since it's possible there won't be any Lannisters left to pay the debt? Yeah, so the only Lannister left who can do this is Tyrion. So if Tyrion survives, I mean, this is perhaps, you know, whether you count it as a sweet ending or not. I think Bronn will end up getting his castle, or castles perhaps. I think that Tyrion, if he survives, will pay the debt. It will be in part of the ending. I think we're just going to get lots of little snapshots of things happening at the end as much as anything else. We'll see this, we'll see what happens in various different places. So one of these snapshots which would work would be Tyrion giving something to Bronn, giving the castle to Bronn and saying, "Here you go, this is yours." I think that would. I mean, Bronn's not really had much of a character arc, so to speak, but that would end what he's been doing. If Tyrion could finish off his joke at the same time, that would be fantastic. Mother of Kraken says, "Everyone go and sub to the Well Told Tale." Thank you so much. If you don't know what the Well Told Tale is, that's my second channel. It is an audio narration channel. It's basically me reading what I consider to be the finest stories of science fiction and fantasy ever written. So we're going through stuff like The Call of Cthulhu. We're currently doing The Time Machine. We've done Frankenstein. We've done a whole load of just absolute classic stories. So if you like the idea of that, please check. There's a link down in the description. There's also, hopefully one of the moderators will put it in the chat. And while I'm doing thank yous, I say this every time. Patrons, thank you. The reason why I can create the amount of content I can is because of your support, and I hugely appreciate it. Thank you so much. This is why I try and give my patrons as many different benefits and advantages as possible. One of these is a chance to have priority questions. This is why I've been working through my patrons' questions here today. It's a chance at $10 patron level, then a chance to influence future content. I give a choice of possible videos every now and then, and let my patrons decide which video they would like me to be producing. Also, all of my audio content and a few extra bonuses, things like readings from the pre-release chapters of The Winds of Winter, stuff like that. So that's all over on my Patreon page. So please do check that out if you're interested in either just supporting the channel or you want access to that stuff. Again, link down in the description. And thank you very much, patrons. I honestly cannot do this without you. Kelly Zahara, thank you so much. This season is so disappointing. Showrunners have killed the beauty and layered nuance that made this the most beloved show ever made. Can't wait for Westworld Season 3 so we can get back to good theory crafting. Love your work. Top 3 YouTuber. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Kelly is long-term supporter of the channel. Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I think that I would definitely agree that the subtlety and nuance has been lost a lot in the latter seasons of this. I think that is largely inevitable, having moved away from the source material. In terms of Westworld Season 3, yes, we're definitely going to be doing that. So after I finished my coverage of Game of Thrones, I will carry on doing book coverage. Obviously, there's going to be the spin-off series. That's probably not going to come out for at least another year. But I will be covering Westworld Season 3, and I'm going to be moving into Tolkien content as well, Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. I know a lot of people are as big of fans of J.R.R. Tolkien as I am, so I'm going to be doing some stuff leading up to the massive budget Middle-earth series that's going to be coming probably in a year or two's time. But I'm going to start off quite soon with that, producing some content about Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth more generally. Vigstable says, Bran meddling. Jaime's real purpose is to get Tyrion to betray Dany. Also, Robert, you do an excellent job with how you answer repeat questions. Well, thank you very much. Jaime's real purpose is to get Tyrion to betray Dany. I mean, I don't think it's... to say Jaime's real purpose is to do that. I think that Jaime had a purpose in and of himself. I think that he had his own character arc. I think that they slightly skewed that at the end. I've talked about this one already. I don't think I liked what they did with Jaime's arc in the last couple of episodes of this season. But yes, I think that Bran is manipulating people in order to get the end that he wants. And I think the end that he wants is something along the lines of pushing back fire as well as ice. I think that's where it is. Let's not forget, he is not Bran anymore. He is the Three-Eyed Raven. He is effectively the Weirwood Network. The Weirwood Network clearly they don't want to have the White Walkers around, but also they don't want to have dragons around. The one thing the trees dislike the most is fire. So I think that he is trying to do this work of pushing both back. Terry Pring says, foreshadowing for Bran as king. This seems to be quite a popular idea, this idea that Bran might become king. Tywin talking to Tommen about the most important trait in a king is wisdom. Bran knows everything. Yeah, I think, and also this idea that the king, the best king, Tyrion says to, I think, Varys, possibly the other way around, that the best king would be the one who doesn't want it. That's a potential bit of foreshadowing. The idea that the most important thing is wisdom. I don't think Bran is necessarily wise so much as knowledgeable. And I think that those are two different things. He would make a perfect master of whisperers. That I don't think anyone could doubt, because he would know everything that's going on around the place. Whether that makes him a good king is a different matter, because what you want from a king is somebody who can be dispensing justice, who can be engaging with the people, acting as a figurehead. Bran, as is, does not seem that capable of doing any of those kind of things at the moment. Just largely stares at people and says a few freaky beaky things about them. So I think they would need to build up to this. I'm not saying they're not going to do it, but for me personally, they would need to build up to it a little bit more. Renoa Wildling says, unpopular opinion, Jaime was redeemed. Armed Brienne to fulfill oath, broke tradition to knight her, defended Winterfell, apologized to Bran. Very difficult to untangle from toxic relationships. Hope for more from books, though. Yeah, so Jaime's arc seems to come suspiciously to an end at the end of episode 2. In as much as he'd apologized to Bran, he'd come up to fulfill his oath. He'd had Brienne talking a lot about how he was an honorable man. He had a heart-to-heart with Tyrion about how he was, what they were both like and how they both grown. It seemed to be saying he's come to a better place now. So all of that I agree with. The fact that it's very difficult to untangle from toxic relationships, yeah, it can be. And it's very human. It just felt a little bit, oh, okay then, so you're going back there now, rather than something which felt natural. That for me was the thing that I was at. And what I was more concerned about with Jaime was his "I never cared about the people" line. That was a kind of retrofitting history to suit yourself, is how it felt to me. But I agree that he did, his arc did achieve all of those kind of endpoints. But it's the fact that he then sort of moved back from that that seemed quite wrong. Let's go back to some questions from my patrons. This is a few questions more broadly about episode 6. So we're looking forward a little bit now. I had 3 or 4 questions on the same kind of theme, so I'll read them out all together and then answer them. So Lady Beverly says, what are your thoughts on Jon? Will he step up to stop Dany ruling as a possible tyrant, or has Arya seen firsthand and will she kill her? Kaylee B says, do you think Arya now has a new name on her list? So Dana the Dreamy says, what I would have loved would have been had Arya at the beginning of the end, after witnessing all the horror, then look into the camera and whisper, Queen Daenerys. Will we see her kill Dany next episode? And Lady Tia saying, Jon seems to have been weary of conflict, war, and death for quite a while. He must have reached his limit by now. Who is most likely to try and stop Dany? So these are all questions around different aspects, and I'd love the way that these are all sort of asking different elements of this. But these are all questions around this idea of who out of Jon and Arya is going to try and stop Dany. I think they probably both will try. I think that what we saw in the trailer seems clearly to imply that Arya will come back into King's Landing. She's not just gone away, she's going to come back into King's Landing. And I think, yes, she will see that Daenerys was as great a threat as Sansa seems to suggest she might have been. And I think that she may well try to kill her. But I think Jon will get closer more easily because of their history together. And I think it's more likely that Jon will do something. Jon, he can make up his own mind on stuff, but he will have Davos beside him. And Davos, we saw what he was like when Shireen died, when one innocent child died. We know what that's going to be like when an innocent child was burned. He saw so many innocent children burning during this last episode. He will be absolutely livid. So he will be pushing Jon on. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever. So Jon would be my guess rather than Arya, but I think they will probably both try. Susan Dunkel says Tyrion is in trouble either way this goes. Dany will burn him for a traitor if she keeps the throne, and the other kingdoms may hang him for being a traitor if Dany loses the throne. What are his chances of surviving the Game of Thrones? I think his chances of surviving are strongest if a couple of things happen. Firstly, if Dany dies quickly, she will, you're absolutely right, she will take it out on Tyrion. She will not want Tyrion to be, she will want to be punishing him for what he did. So that is where we're at with him. So if Dany dies quickly, he's got a greater chance of surviving. If he gets through that, actually, I think Sansa is the person. The two of them shared quite a touching moment, if you remember, down in the crypts, and I think that she will actually be in his corner the most afterwards. So I think if he survives Dany, he's probably going to be okay, is my general view. I don't think that the other people who survive will blame him. I think particularly if he tells them that this was his plan with the bells and all the rest of it, I think that they will understand. Dracarys Noir says, Arya has been shown to be an exceptional marksman with a bow and arrow. I'm hoping she uses this and her Faceless Men skills to kill Drogon. Can we see any parallels between Torrhen Stark, Brandon Snow, and Jon and Arya, possibly an alternative outcome to the original story? Yeah, so I think the idea, what we're trying to pick at with that last bit is this idea of using perhaps weirwood arrows to kill a dragon, which we got hints of back in the books of what they were planning to do in the olden days. Torrhen Stark was the king in the north who kneeled, the king who kneeled when seeing what the dragons were doing, just decided, you know what, I'm going to prioritize saving my own people over anything else. So that's what's going on there. Yes, Arya could well try and attack Dany. I think that's entirely possible. Drogon, yeah, I don't think I can add anything to this. Drogon has to be dealt with, and Drogon, because otherwise you've just got a dragon on the loose, and that's not going to end the story. The story has to end with Drogon not being there, either killed, probably by Arya, or flying off of his own volition. Those are the two ways that I could see this ending. Maura Lee says Bran had visions of King's Landing and a dragon flying overhead. He must have known the final outcome of how this story will end. Why do you think he did not tell anyone about Dany and her plans to burn down King's Landing? Many might argue that he could have saved a lot of innocent lives. Yes, so this is a big question. So for those who didn't pick up on it, there was a shot in the episode of a shadow of a dragon flying over King's Landing. It was the shadow of Drogon flying over King's Landing. That was the shot that was previously in one of Bran's visions. Now, if you remember when he was escaping from Bloodraven's cave, he just had this, like, they were rifling through a whole load of just images of various different things, as if he was downloading a whole load of information. There were pictures of Jaime killing the Mad King. There were pictures of stuff that was happening elsewhere at the time. And there was this shot of a dragon. That one didn't seem to fit anywhere because it hadn't happened. We now know that that was effectively Bran having a vision of the future. So Bran saw what was going to happen at King's Landing, and Bran did not say anything. So we have to ask, why is this? I think, just a gut instinct, I think it's because he was happy for that to happen, because it would take that to get people like Jon to turn on Dany. And that's what was needed in order for fire to be pushed back, for the dragons to be pushed back. So I think it's not non-interference. I think this is Bran deliberately trying to manipulate events in order to get the ending that he wants. He's done it with pushing back the army of the dead, the Night King. Manipulated, gave Dany the dagger and all the rest of it. So this is just him doing it down in the south now. Then second question from Maura Lee, saying Dany is on the warpath with anyone who stands in her way to sitting on the Iron Throne. Given her vision in the House of the Undying on the show regarding the throne, how do you think the story will end for Dany? So I think there's picking up on the vision in the House of the Undying, because this is a thing I think I'll probably talk about this in my preview video for episode 6. But if you remember that, and this is a vision in the show only, not in the books. In the books, a lot more complicated stuff was going on. But in the show, Dany has a vision of her walking into the throne room at King's Landing. It looks as if it's been destroyed. There's snow everywhere. Snow's falling down. She reaches out, nearly touches the Iron Throne, doesn't, then walks out through the door. The door then sort of changes clearly into being the tunnel going through the wall to the north. She emerges from that into a tent with Drogo and her baby child who died. So that's the entirety of it. Now, what does that tell us? Well, I think the first bit of this tells us that, as we've thought, that the Red Keep King's Landing will be destroyed. Snow, I think, represents figuratively Jon Snow, that she is not the rightful heir, that Jon Snow is actually the rightful heir. I think the fact that she reaches out and doesn't touch the Iron Throne suggests very strongly the fact that she may rule for a short period, but she's not fundamentally going to rule Westeros. And then the bit that she heads out and then goes to see Drogo, people who have died effectively, that she cares about, seems to imply her then going off to death herself. So if we were to look at that and kind of try and interpret what the visions figuratively mean, it is that she will come to King's Landing. She's not going to be the rightful ruler. She's not going to sit on the Iron Throne. King's Landing is going to be destroyed, and after that, she's going to go off to death. So that seems to be what we're going to see in episode 6, if we're going to interpret that vision. They, pardon me, they have been quite low on the fulfilling visions front and fulfilling prophecy front, but that is the one that is left there that's still kind of outstanding. So we'll see how we go with that. But that would be how I would interpret it. Let's have a look. Becca Davis, now picking up a few things from the chat. Becca Davis saying, I can see Danny's state of mind. Last year, I lost my BFF of 15 years and my 6-year-old daughter within a month. It shatters your world. I'm sympathetic. Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss. It's the when you have not just one bad thing hit you, but 2, 3, 4, one after the other, it can send a person reeling. And this is what they were trying to show, is that she loses her children, she loses her best friend, she loses her relationship, she loses her protector, she loses this again and again and again. And that can do strange things to you. And for some people, it makes them just lash out. And that is the kind of the impression that we've got here, that they're trying to show us. So thank you, Becca. Shannon Thompson saying, why did bells ring when Bran walked ravens in episode 3? I didn't hear them, I have to say, if that's there. If it's the case, then yes, that does seem to provide some evidence that perhaps he was walking into Drogon in episode 5. I still don't think so, simply based on what Dany's reaction was and what it looks like was going on there. It didn't look like she was out of control of her dragon. But yeah, I would have to go back and have a look at that one. Thanks, Shannon. I hadn't spotted that with the bells ringing. Three-Eyed Monkey, do you think King Bran represents the rise of the surveillance state and an apathetic political class? Joke. All right, I will leave that one there. It's a good thought. I will let others think about that one. Thanks for the great discussions, Robert. No, thank you. I really appreciate that. Imenja says, what do you think of Gendry ending up as king? There needs to be some justification based on bloodline. Love your insights. Thank you very much. Okay, so Gendry as king is not as bizarre as it might appear on 2 grounds. The first is that he is the only surviving child of Robert Baratheon. And the second, after Dany and Jon, he's probably got the strongest bloodline to the Targaryens. His great-grandmother was a Targaryen. And because the Targaryens, their family tree was quite slim, shall we say, just marrying each other, there aren't lots of other offshoots. So probably Dany legitimizing Gendry made him something like third in line to the throne. A little bit crazy, but there you go. So there is that there. What you're saying about there needs to be some justification based on bloodline. I mean, I think that so much has happened in this that they are now beyond the point where they feel that they have to have a monarch fitting some particular pattern. I think that they're just like, what next? So I think that's the world they're at. Yes, Robert Baratheon claimed some kind of bizarre birthright because his grandmother was a Targaryen, and therefore that was a kind of a loose justification for it. But when Aegon the Targaryen came in, he didn't claim to be the rightful king because he had ancestors in Westeros or because he was related to any of the ruling lords there at the time. He just took control. And I think that that is more the feeling we've got at the moment, is that we've got, I talked a little bit about the echoing of Aegon I with Dany. Aegon the Conqueror came in, established the Seven Kingdoms and the Iron Throne and the Targaryen rule and all the rest of it on Balerion the Black Dread. Dany comes in with Drogon, the echo of Balerion the Black Dread, and she is going to oversee the end, I think, of Targaryen rule and the end of the Iron Throne. So I think there are like bookmarks to that period. And then what happens next is actually everybody looks around and goes, well, what now? Not trying to justify who's going to be the monarch based upon relation to the Targaryens. Kelly Zahara saying, I love Arya in the show and the books, but why is she suddenly the main character of the show? Good question. I think the thing with her and the Night King, I'm not going to go over everything to do with that again, but she was in the minds of the showrunners the most likely person to kill the Night King. And to be fair to them, her storyline was all about becoming an incredibly cool kick-ass assassin. So basically that's where it was at, and that kind of made sense there. I think now, though, she is not going to be a main character in the second bit here. I think she's had her big moment, possibly the killing of Drogon, but she's had her big moment. I don't think she's suddenly the main character. The main character of this last bit here is, or the main characters are Jon and Daenerys, and that's where we're at now. The fighting against the Night King was being dealt with in the first half of the season. The second half is what's going down in King's Landing. Artie Sizzle says, when Dany dies, they have to kill Drogon, part of the bitter. Yeah, I agree. As I say, I think there's two options. Either Drogon gets killed or Drogon just flies off. I think those are the two options. Mac Doherty says, thank you very much for $20. That's very kind. Since the Night King was a creation for the show, do you think the strong focus on that, at the cost of excluding or butchering plot lines from the book, is contributing to the unearned feeling that a lot of us are experiencing? Yeah, good question. So I think that the Night King was used as a shortcut. Firstly, to give a face for the White Walkers, both in their creation and as they sort of started marching south, but also provided the way to destroy and end the White Walkers. You kill the Night King, you kill all the White Walkers. In terms of the excluding or butchering plot lines, I don't mind so much actually excluding plot lines. Like Aegon would have added more in. Yes, I accept that. The whole Dornish subplot is gone, which makes Dorne feel quite weak. But I kind of understood the fact this is a TV show and you can't replicate exactly everything that's in those massive stories. So I kind of don't mind stuff that's been left out. In terms of the butchering of stuff, I think what I would say is that some things do feel rushed, which perhaps is what you're getting at. And so the ending of the White Walkers threat and the Army of the Dead, it was Arya came in, stabbed, and that was it, done, because of the way they'd set that up. And I wanted more of a payoff connected with who they were and what they were wanting. Similarly, the Daenerys thing, they have been building up to it for a few episodes. I don't think there's any disputing that. Does that make it feel unearned when it happens? I guess so, but I think it was more a shock about it was her doing it because we'd seen her as this hero all the way through. What I will say is that apparently HBO were happy to fund at least another few episodes of Game of Thrones. And I think that this season would have benefited from that. I think that they squashed stuff in, and so we only just got like a scene here or a scene there with characters that really needed a whole lot more development. But good question. Paige Popejoy says, what are your thoughts on the logistics of the final episode? Do you believe Sansa would respond to a summons to King's Landing? I don't know whether she would respond to a summons to King's Landing. She may well receive one, but I think it's more a matter of if she thinks that the future of the Seven Kingdoms is going to be decided down in King's Landing, she is going to want to be there. So I think that's what that is. I think that the way that they're going to do the second half of the episode, I think this is broadly going to be in two halves. The first half is dealing with Daenerys and what happens there. The second half is the what next. I think that bit they need to get people in there, and I think that they will use the fact that Varys wrote to people as a way of explaining why people are there. So I think that's what it is. Whether it's a summons, I don't think Varys was summoning them so much as letting them know what was going on and saying, come to King's Landing and we'll sort something out. So I think that is what's going to be happening with her. Marcus Aurelius says, and this ties in with a question from a moment ago, Walter White to Heisenberg took 4 seasons. Daenerys to Mad Queen seems to happen abruptly over about 2 episodes. Was this done for the shock factor? Well, yes, partly. I think that shock, surprise, these are things that the showrunners clearly like. They clearly think are good parts of storytelling. So I think that that's there. I don't think we can pretend that it wasn't hinted at for a while. I think where the kind of the contracting of the story, where I think it missed out is things with Jon and Daenerys' relationship. So really, if you boil it down, they got together right at the very end of season 8. And then in most of episode 1, they are actually, yes, they might technically be together, but they're mostly Jon's reunited with the Starks, and there was that thing with Sansa and Dany, and by the end of that, then Jon's getting his news about who he is, and then he's treating her kind of weirdly for the next episode. So really, the Jon and Daenerys relationship was just that one scene when they went off flying together. That was the only bit of us seeing them as a couple. And so that is why this kind of payoff about that they had a deeply loving relationship and now she's really torn by the breakdown in this relationship, that felt a little bit false because they hadn't shown us that. They just like, yeah, okay, well, they're together, now they're madly in love. Fine, but show us that, don't tell us that. So that, for me, that was where the contraction really hit, is that it didn't show the development of relationships and stuff like that. Was it done for the shock factor? Yes, I think partly because I think they clearly do like it. Amy Robert Shaw says, I left questions on the Patreon page. Thank you. Hopefully I've got them if they came. I can't remember seeing them, Amy. If they arrived after about 1:45 the hour when I was about to do it, then I'm afraid I might have missed them because I have to draw a line somewhere and organize them into some sort of order. So hopefully I've got yours in the ones to come. If not, I apologize. I will have a look and I will try and reply on Patreon itself. Sylvia Sebrecht saying, what about Bronn? Will he save Tyrion? I don't know whether he'll save Tyrion, but I think that he will certainly come to collect his reward for not killing him before, which is, yeah, easy money if you can get it. Anisha9457 saying, thank you, I've enjoyed it. You're very welcome. We will definitely be going for a little while longer. Paige Popejoy saying, your positivity is a welcome presence on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you. Could Sansa's fate mirror that of her direwolf? The Queen, Daenerys instructs Jon to execute her. So Sansa's direwolf, if you remember, this is way back in season 1, episode 2, possibly. Arya's direwolf bites Joffrey. The Lannister forces are searching for it. Arya sends Nymeria off. Cersei demands the death of a direwolf, and eventually they decide to kill Sansa's direwolf lady. So is that kind of foreshadowing what might happen to Sansa? I think as far as I'm concerned, the direwolf Stark link, it's huge in the books, not so much in the show. The only real thing in the show seems to be this kind of idea that the name of the direwolf is reflective of the fate of the Stark. So you get Ghost for Jon. Jon survives death and is there afterwards, which is quite ghost-like, I guess. So that's their lady suggests that she's going to be the Lady of Winterfell, which she is. So I don't think that there's more here than what we've got going on there. I think that the summer Bran thing implies either that he has more of a role in bringing about the end of the Army of the Dead in the books than he did on the show, or he is there beyond spring and he is going to carry on into the summer. So with A Dream of Spring being the last book, he will survive on beyond. So those are the possibilities there, I think. The Root says, my ending. After Dany's death, the Iron Bank shows up to demand Drogo, offering to wipe out Westerosi debt, which is undoubtedly sovereign debt. Yes, possibly. I don't think, however, you can demand a dragon. We got this from very early on with when the Unsullied were sold for a dragon, and basically Dany showed you can't own a dragon. That's not how it works. So I don't think that you can give Drogon to somebody. I don't think that would work. I don't think Drogon would go. So I can't see that would be the way it would work. I like the idea of the Iron Bank coming in. They definitely, in the real world, would emerge at some point and say to whoever happens to be ruling afterwards, okay, so this is the debt you now owe us. They will pass debt from Cersei on to whoever happens to be sitting on the Iron Throne. That's the way that they've always operated. Dario Rivera says, love the content, thank you. Any chance we see Tyrion convince Dany of a trial by combat where Bronn or Arya steps in and we see a face-off against Grey Worm? Ooh. I like the idea. I don't think that's going to be the way it works. I think that why would Dany bother is the short answer. I don't think that she will feel that she has to play by the rules. I think that she will see if she thinks that Tyrion has been betraying her, then I think she should just kill him rather than anything else. That's what she did for Varys. I mean, it looks good. I think Bronn versus Grey Worm would be a fantastic fight, but I don't think so. Sylvia Sebrecht says, Jaime killed the Mad King only for Cersei's sake. Yeah, this is the point I was making before. I think that's the bit that really bugged me. The idea that he didn't care about the people. No, he cared about the people. That's the whole point of his arc and starting point. And Natalie Rabus says, thank you for your unfailing patience. Well, you're very welcome. I'm really enjoying the questions, guys, so it's not a matter of patience, but thank you. Gary Oldham, possible that Bran is showing the Starks and Tyrion the future so they can stop her. We didn't see either conversation with Bran. No, we didn't see either conversation. I don't think that if Bran had told Tyrion what was going to happen and Tyrion had believed it, that Tyrion would have done what he's done. Because effectively, until the very end, he's just stuck by Dany and just asked her not to do stuff. If he believed that she was going to do all of those things, then he would have taken much stronger action like Varys did. So I don't think so. I like the idea, though. I don't think so. Donna Daly, do you think that Dany is Rhaego, the stallion that mounts the world? No, I think Drogon is, which is I'll explain. For those who can't remember all the way back to season 1, so Dany was pregnant with Khal Drogo's child, and there was a prophecy that he was going to be the stallion that mounts the world. And one of the reasons that Mirri Maz Duur gives for implicitly killing Rhaego, Dany's unborn child, is because the prophecy was that Rhaego was going to burn cities to the ground, and she didn't want that to happen. So she killed this child who would grow up to somebody who would be burning cities to the ground. So out of the fire that killed Mirri Maz Duur, Drogon was born, as well as the other 2 dragons. And Dany then consistently referred to them as her children. And Drogon, as her child, did quite literally burn a city to the ground. So the implication is that this prophecy that Mirri Maz Duur was trying to stop, that Dany's child was going to burn cities to the ground, actually she helped make happen by dying in that pyre that brought Drogon to life. So that I think was what was going on there, rather than anything else. But yeah, good memory thinking about Rhaego and all the rest of it. Let's go back to my questions. I've got 4 more questions from my patrons. Howland's little sister saying, now that Varys is dead, I surmise that what he heard as a child when he was cut was Dany's voice saying Dracarys. What do you think he heard in the flames all those years ago? I think we will never know, and it doesn't matter. I know this isn't a satisfactory answer to most people, but I think this is what the truth of it is. George R. R. Martin is very much about this idea that actually the truth of prophecy, the truth of visions, matters a whole lot less than what people believe, what people do based upon their belief in a vision or a prophecy or something. He cares about people, he cares about consequences, he doesn't care so much about the truth of a particular prophecy. He's said that the gods are never going to walk this earth. That's not what's about to happen. So if we take that as the starting point, and we say what happened with Varys was what shaped him as a person. This is what drove him forward as a person. What he heard doesn't matter. Actually, the important thing here is the fact that he was shaped by what happened, and that affected him personally, and it was horrific. And so he built himself up from the very bottom to become the person that he was. So that is the important point here, not what actually was said. That's actually, in George R. R. Martin's mind, that's secondary. Tanya Yoga Nation says, very serious question here. You're telling me that they had enough money to have Dany burn King's Landing to the ground, but they didn't have the money for Jon to pet Ghost goodbye. Yeah, I know. This is another thing I was very sad about with this season. I'm not a person who does CGI. I don't know. My guess is that actually the money to make a pretend city look like it's burning is probably a lot less than having to do the CGI of a person hugging a dire wolf that's not there. But I don't know. I think that was a huge misstep on their part. I think that it was a triumph of cost effectiveness over character and plot line, or failing, this is the better way of saying it. It was a victory of the one over the other, and I think that was a miscalculation on their part. Donna Daly says, initially I found episode 3 unsatisfying, mainly because I found the idea of Cersei being the ultimate boss to be ridiculous. Episode 5 has made me far happier with episode 3. Dany is the ultimate boss, not Cersei. Jon has to rally against the forces of ice and will have to do the same against fire. It will be the war where Jon's heart will be in conflict. Yes, I think, and asking whether it would work better as a 10-episode series, yes, I've already covered that. I think that it definitely, having the extra time to develop it, would have helped. In the main part of your question, in terms of this being a war, Jon rallying for the war against fire, not just ice, I agree completely. I think I started this talking about fire and ice, these two opposing equal forces, both of which could destroy the world. Ice has been dealt with, now fire has to be dealt with. All this time, we've not really thought of fire as being an equal and opposite thing which can destroy the world, but that's the case. That's what it is. So, yes, I think that it also makes sense of Miguel Sapochnik, who directed episodes 3 and 5, talked about this being, he saw episodes 3 to 5 as being part of a continuous whole, that he wanted to direct all 3 of them. And when you stop and look at those 3, then you get the mirroring, you get the fight against, or the threat of the ice in episode 3, you get the threat of the fire in episode 5, you have the hinge being episode 4. So that is what is going on here. And then episode 6 will be how is that dealt with. So yes, I think I agree completely with you there. And the Chinster says, hi, Robert. Who do you think will be the last character standing at the end of the show? Will we see the end of the Targaryen or Lannister families, as we saw the end of the Umbers and the Mormonts? And does that increase the likelihood of a Stark dynasty? Well, I think the short answer is most of the people who are currently still alive will survive the last episode. I think Dany won't. Drogon, I've already given the 2 options that I could see there. Grey Worm, again, is 50-50. Tyrion might go, but all of the main characters, other main characters, Jon will survive, but I think he's going to walk off. Sansa, Sam, Davos, Arya, I think these characters are all going to survive. I think we will see the effective end of House Targaryen with Dany's death. Jon is still Targaryen, but I don't think that he's going to be furthering the family in any way. The Lannisters, I think Tyrion will survive. I think he's probably now going to end up being the Lord of Casterly Rock, which is a kind of a payoff for all the times that his father said, no, of course, you're never going to inherit it. And I think that kind of works well with this character. So I think that they will carry on. Does it increase the likelihood of a Stark dynasty? The Starks have so much power. If this goes the way that it seems to be going, if Dany's gone, if Drogon's gone, the Unsullied and the Dothraki get out of there, if Jon steps aside, the Starks are the most powerful force after that. They have got not only themselves, but Sansa has got Robin Arryn, who's going to do what she wants. Edmure Tully, if he makes a comeback, he's her uncle, so she's got the link across to there. We've got the Baratheons, Gendry, he's got a link up to the north as well through Arya, so she's in a very strong position. So does that mean that we're going to have a Stark dynasty ruling the Seven Kingdoms? I hope they don't go down that route, but they definitely will be the most powerful force at the end of it, I would guess. Jimmy Jack 35 saying, missed my answer earlier. When did The Long Night actually start on this show? Season 1, episode 1. Well, I think this is a matter of interpretation. So the White Walkers started moving on the show version of events about 40 years before the show started. What the Long Night is seems to be the endless winter, and that started to encroach from the north right from that time. So it sort of moves south through the first few seasons and then descends at the end of season 7. then reaches south of the wall. So winter itself only technically comes in season 7. So the long night, they kind of made it to be just a night. In episode 3, that was the name of the episode, was The Long Night. But yeah, The Long Night technically started with a gradual movement south with the White Walkers and the Night King. Danny Zero YouTube, thank you very much. Didn't see a question attached to that, but thank you for your super chat. Who else have we got? The Root reminded psych profile for school shooter spree killer is suicidal, not murderous. Recent bereavement equals high suicide risk. Watched thinking, ring the bells now because Danny might snap. You are the best. Thank you very much. On that first bit, yeah, this is quite interesting. So the school shooter spree killer thing is, I think, what they were trying to get us to think about. Not exactly that, but that kind of, what is it that could trigger somebody who, their family would say, oh, well, they were such a lovely young lad and all the rest of it. What would trigger somebody to actually suddenly let the anger out? And that, I think, was where they were heading with it. Nicholas Hey-Ho says, love your work. Thanks for contributing to Game of Thrones lore, especially season 8. Thank you very much. Damien Sasson says, don't you think the Varys betrayal of Dany was also rushed? I mean, there was literally nothing that changed from the time they left Meereen. If anything, she gave him more than she needed to help. Yes, I think it was rushed. There were the conversations between Varys and Tyrion that went on over a number of episodes, but him actually turning to him being turned in happened in the space of half an episode. So it wasn't a long thing in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, it was rushed. We got, 2 scenes of him before he died? Not huge amounts. So yeah, I think I would agree with you. And morally, I didn't see a question, but thank you so much. Another very generous super chat. Okay, guys, I'm going to go, I think, for another 10, 15 minutes or so. I've got a little bit more left in my voice, but not huge amounts. So now is the time to drop any more chats in questions into the chat. And I've got The Root saying, not a question, direwolves are not CGI, live wolf motion capture twice, very difficult to do, technical article on vulture.com today. There you go. This is my lack of knowledge about CGI extends even to the extent I didn't realize they weren't CGI. So thank you. I do feel free to check that one out. Yeah, as I understand it, it's not so much the cost of it, it's more the difficulty of doing it. But yeah, do feel free to check that out. Sylvia Sebrecht says, why put the God's Eye near to King's Landing? What would be the role of the God's Eye and the Pact, books or show? So the God's Eye is, when you say it's near to King's Landing, it's about 2 weeks ride away. At least the Inn of the Crossroads is, which is just near to Harrenhal, and the God's Eye is just south of that. So maybe you could get there in a week's ride. It's not right next to it. What the sort of the placement of it, as much as anything else, is, I think, to do with the fact that the Inn of the Crossroads and the Crossroads is the kind of the heart of Westeros. This is the center point now, because if you're at the Inn of the Crossroads, it's named because it is literally on a crossroads. You go north, you go to Winterfell, south you go to King's Landing, east to the Erie, west to River Run. That's the center point of the road network of Westeros. Now, next to that, you get Harrenhal, because that was built as being the huge hubris, as being like the biggest castle in the entire land. The greatest and all the rest of it. So that's why that was there. And the God's Eye, And the Isle of Faces also very much this idea of them being central, the idea that that's central to the Weirwood network. So that is what is going on there. It's not so much that the King's Landing itself is central or that it's important that they're close. The King's Landing is important because it is where it was closest to where Aegon the Conqueror landed more than anything else. That was what was going on there. Okay, let me have a quick check through the chat. Just have a quick see what we've got going on there. Andrew K, hi there Andrew, saying to explain the betrayal from Varys and the potential to have Dany go as bad as she did, we needed to see Dany doing more indefensible actions. Yeah, so I agree completely. This felt a bit rushed. There wasn't as big a build up to it as perhaps we might have wanted. The Scarecrow says Jon Snow said, but if you use them, dragons, to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different, you're just more of the same. Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point here of Dany's arc, is that she was wanting to be different, but actually she's been acting the same as everyone else. Chrissy of Oldstones, hi Chrissy, thank you. One of my wonderful moderators is just clarifying for somebody that what I will be doing, focusing on the books. As for other shows, Westworld, the Amazon Lord of the Rings series, and I think he's doing the Wheel of Time. I might do the Wheel of Time. I know that they're making the Wheel of Time. I will have to have another look at the books to see whether they excite me. It's been a long time since I've read the books. The other thing, obviously, is my second channel, The Well Told Tale. I'm going to be working on that quite a lot. And one or two other things that I haven't yet fully decided on. So there are some things that I really like. I haven't yet worked out whether people will be interested in them. Things like Black Mirror, the TV series, which I love. I don't know the interest there. The Witcher, which is, most people know it as a video game, but they're making there's some books, a whole series of books there, and they're making a TV series for Netflix as well. So that's another thing that I'm considering doing as well. But what I'm going to do after the end of season 8 proper, then I'm just going to take a moment and just going to sit back and just think, what's next? Where do I go from here? But some things are definitely happening. Definitely more stuff on the books. Definitely stuff on Lord of the Rings. Definitely Westworld season 3. Okay, I think probably the last one I'll pick up on is Megan Matthews saying, so you think that Bran just used Dany to defeat the Night King and used Jon to help throw her away when he was done? I don't think I would use it quite that, use those words. Bran has been using people. Bloodraven was using Jon, or guiding him, probably more accurately. I think that, yes, Bran was very happy for Dany to be coming north, and I think that what his aim was to get rid of the army of the dead, ice, and also the dragon's fire, and I think that he's doing that in a kind of a manipulative way. Pushing the first domino is basically where we're at. Okay, guys, I think I am going to call it a day there. My throat is now starting to get a little bit tight, so I'm going to head off. There will be another super chat, not super chat, there will be another, I keep on saying super chats, because this been incredibly generous today, guys. Thank you so much. There will be another live stream on Sunday. This is before the final ever episode of Game of Thrones, and I have got Aziz from History of Westeros is going to be my special guest for that, so please do keep an eye out for that. If you're at all interested in my second channel, The Well Told Tale, please do go and check that out. There's a link down in the description. If you want more from my Game of Thrones Season 8 content, then there's going to be a link appearing here. If you're watching this later, there will be a link appearing somewhere around here to that. If you would like to support the channel or get access to some exclusive materials that I provide for my patrons, there's a link to my Patreon page, which will be appearing up there somewhere. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate the fantastic chat. Some really great questions, and I shall see you all on Sunday. Take care.